Welcome to the first official Made episode. So today I'm joined by the only fitting guest that we could have to kick things off, a man that has served over 30 years in the industry with not very long left to go, but I'm joined by Graeme Herlihy.
Hi.
Welcome, Graeme. You've had a huge tenure in our industry, as we know, but we just had a chat off air, but 3 official days, I think, left to go. I'd like to rewind things back to where things started. I understand you did mechanical engineering at Portsmouth University, which would have been in the 80s?
It would.
Yeah. Where did that interest in engineering come from? Is it something you'd been interested in as a young boy? What was the decision to embark on that kind of career?
So I think I made the mistake that so many kids did in those days, that I liked motorbikes and cars. I was always fixing up cars and motorbikes, and I thought, therefore, I need to do engineering, right?
Yeah.
And then when I arrived at university, I found there was no spanners.
Yeah.
It was all thermodynamics and stress analysis and
In
blah, blah, blah. But that's actually why I started.
Okay, so just an interest in adrenaline toys, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. I was lucky because I was sponsored through university by a company. I did a so-called undergraduate apprenticeship with a company called Bendix, which is air brakes for commercial vehicles.
Are they still around now?
They're not in that form.
Okay.
They're part of I've forgotten the name now, but one of these big automotive groups. Part of a big automotive group.
Okay.
Actually, the factory. I'm from Bristol, as you probably can tell from my accent. My father worked there when it was Douglas Motorcycles.
Right.
So now you see the motorbike connection
the link
in the family, and they eventually became Bendix. And my dad got me a job as an undergraduate apprentice and went through university. And actually, I did a couple of years postgraduate working for them before sneaking into the plastics industry.
Yeah. So before we get into that, have you got any siblings, or what's the family situation?
Yeah, brother and sister.
Okay.
So I'm the baby.
Right. Okay.
And a mere 62, and I've got a brother who's 12 years older than me and a sister who's 16 years older than me.
Right. Okay. So growing up, you were the age gap, I guess. They'd kind of left home and were getting on with their lives.
Growing up, I had 4 parents.
Right. Okay.
Which is, that's not going to be a good thing, is it?
Yeah. So grew up, relatively normal upbringing, went to university, did your postgrad, and then you mentioned sneaking into the plastics industry.
Well, it happened by mistake.
Okay.
It was
usually does.
It was a complete mistake.
Yeah.
My first job in the industry actually was for Cincinnati Millicron.
Okay.
Another injection molding machine supplier. So in fact, I've worked for 3. And I went for a job. I decided I should be a sales guy. I had all these salespeople visiting me in their smart suits and with their company Mondeos.
Yeah.
And I thought I could do that. So I applied for a job with Cincinnati Millicron, who I knew because they make machine tools.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I was at the interview, and they said, "So, Mr. Herlihy, why do you think you'd be good for this position?" And I said, "Well, I've done an apprenticeship. I understand engineering and all about machine tools, so I could sell machine tools." And the guy said, "Well, actually, this is injection molding machines." And I don't really remember if I knew what an injection molding machine was at that point, but I said, "Hey, I could sell that."
Yeah.
So, and in fact, I was offered 3 jobs around that time. It was a very buoyant time in the industry. It was 1988.
Okay.
It was a very buoyant time in the industry, and a young, presentable guy could get a job in sales quite easily. And I was offered 3 jobs, but the one with Cincinnati Millicron meant spending 3 months doing product training in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Right.
And that, as you could imagine, as a 25-year-old, was very appealing. So that's the reason why I'm in the plastics industry today.
So you went to Ohio?
I went to Ohio, spent 3 months there.
Yeah.
I learned nothing.
Right.
Why
was that?
Well, I spent most of the time in the bar.
Yeah, I thought that might be the answer.
It was a fantastic time. I found that at Cincinnati, and this is something that's really changed in the industry. In those days, Cincinnati, the company, would hire kids straight out of high school, from all over the country, and then they'd have like an apprenticeship, and they'd teach them about the product. It'd be a 2-year apprenticeship. They'd teach them about the product, and then give them a sales territory in the US, and off they'd go.
Mm-hmm.
By coincidence, I landed in Cincinnati just as there was an intake of domestic salespeople.
Right.
So they became friends, and we went out and partying. And they had a very strict kind of apprenticeship to go through, but no one really cared what this strange English guy was doing. So, okay, they put me wiring up some heater bands on molding machines, but I didn't really learn very
Right.
much.
Okay. So then after your 3 months, which is obviously fun, 3 months in Ohio,
Yeah.
that was good fun. And then you came back, and then what happened?
And then what happened was they handed me the keys to a company car.
Okay.
They handed me a box of brochures.
Okay.
They told me which was my sales territory, and they said, go sell machines.
So where was the sales territory?
Southwest. So I was still living in Bristol then, where I'm from.
Okay, yeah.
And
your area went as far as where?
Oh, now you're asking me. I guess it was towards London, maybe along the M4 to Swindon. I had South Wales and the Southwest.
So kind
down
of
to
between
Cornwall.
Bristol and London, that kind of section of the country.
Yeah, and Wales to the west, and the Southwest down to Cornwall.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're going to ask me how I see the differences in the industry today, and that already we arrive at one.
Yeah.
That would not work now.
No.
So just to be handed a company car and some brochures and be told to go sell, I've hired in my time. I've hired a lot of sales guys now, and I would never hire someone under.
I assume it worked at the time, did it, or not?
Yeah, I did. Ish.
Yeah.
The industry was so much less sophisticated.
Yeah.
In a way then. So my job was to bang on doors. I mean, you've got to remember it's a long time ago. And so there was no mobile phones. There was no CRM systems.
So what point are we at here? Are we like mid-90s?
No, this is 88.
This is not even into 90s.
This is when I first started, 1988. And my connection to the office was a pager.
Right.
So every now and again you get beep, 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 beep. Beep, beep. Oh, the office wants me.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to drive around and find a phone box. You remember them?
Yeah,
Or maybe you don't remember them.
No, I've seen them, yeah.
And then find a phone box and then find out what the office wants me. But, it's so difficult now to imagine life without, especially life on the road, professional life without a mobile phone. But that's how it was. There was no email, didn't have a laptop.
Yeah.
So I would just, I found it much better in those days to cold call rather than try and make telephone appointments.
Yeah.
So typically you'd have a day at home and make appointments, but I used to like just banging on the door.
Yeah.
And the plastics industry in terms of the number of companies was so much bigger than it is now. So I'd spend a day in Malvern or a day in Verwood in Dorset or wherever and call around all the companies, and I could get 6 to 8 calls in a day.
So it's basically a numbers game, isn't it?
Yeah, now it's a different world. Now it's
so this is 88, and then how long did you stay at this company for?
Only a couple of years.
Okay.
I mean, it was a tough grounding. I didn't really know who I was joining. Cincinnati Millicron, who aren't around anymore, actually, were not in that guise. It's an American injection molding machine manufacturer. They were American machines. They kind of, on a European level, weren't very good.
Yeah.
And actually, something I think not many people in the industry know is Cincinnati, for a while, built machines in Northern Ireland.
Right.
So in the middle of the Troubles in the 70s, there were big grants to establish manufacturing organizations. And Cincinnati started building machines in Northern Ireland, and it didn't really go very well. The Europeans didn't accept the product.
Okay.
But we had a few customers. So I arrived into this world where I knew nothing about injection molding. I had brochures, but that was it. And all our existing customers hated us.
Right, okay.
And they hated us because Cincinnati had built the factory, tried to grow their market presence in Europe, and then it didn't work, so they left.
Right, okay.
And when they left, there was no spare parts, no service. If you wanted a spare part, you had to phone the US.
Blimey.
So I suddenly encountered a situation where all our customers hated us. Maybe that's putting it a bit strongly. Yeah. But they certainly weren't in the mood for buying more machines shipped from the US. Fine. But at the same time, and this is maybe something a lot of people in the industry don't remember or don't know, I was offering the first ever all electric injection molding machine. Back then.
Wow, okay.
It was the Cincinnati Millicron ACT. Okay. It was called.
Right.
Now, anyone listening to this probably doesn't recognize that name, but the story there is that the CEO of Cincinnati Millicron, so remember they make injection molding machines and machine tools.
Yeah.
The machine tools had drive systems, control systems that were made by a company called Fanuc.
Okay.
And the CEO, Harold Feig, had this idea, and he said to this supplier, hey, why don't we build an injection molding machine based on the technology, the drive technology that we use for machine tools?
Yeah.
And the Japanese said, oh, good idea. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they built it.
Yeah.
They built a prototype, and it was decided that no one in the plastics industry has ever heard of Fanuc, so they couldn't possibly brand an injection molding machine Fanuc. So they did it as a joint venture and sold it as a Cincinnati Millicron.
Right.
So it was a Cincinnati Millicron ACT. I really don't remember what ACT stands for now.
Yeah.
But
Wow, that's incredible.
But I was selling a fairly basic hydraulic injection molding machine made in the US.
Yeah.
And I was also selling this all-electric injection molding machine when it was a super innovative, novel idea. In those times.
What was the buy-in like for the all-electric back then?
Well,
Were people interested, or were they like, oh, no, I'm not?
everyone was interested.
Oh, okay.
And this was actually the positive side. So I said before that most of our existing customers hated us, but everyone wanted to learn a bit more about this very strange all-electric thing. I mean, not so many wanted to buy it, but they wanted to hear about it because it's very innovative technology. And actually, I was there 2 years, and I know very well exactly how successful I was. I sold 9 machines in 2 years.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Which by today's standards maybe not so much.
Yeah.
But they were all electric
So
machines.
was there any competition for the all-electric back then?
No.
That was
It was
like the only one.
invented from an idea by Harold Feig and built by Fanuc.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So after there, is that when you then joined Demag?
Yeah.
And sales director there?
No, eventually.
So how long were you sales director there?
I guess for the last, so I was there 10 years. I think I was sales director probably for the last 3 or 4. I started off so there's another part of injection molding machine history.
Yeah.
When the Berlin Wall came down,
Mm-hmm.
there was many suppliers in all different industries who no longer had their captive market, and there was a company called Quasi. I bet you've never heard of Quasi.
No, I haven't.
Machines. So Quasi made it was like a Skoda, you can say, but the old Skoda, not the modern Skoda, the old Skoda, the kind of cheap and cheerful machine made in East Germany.
Okay.
And Quasi, of course, they no longer had their captive market when the wall came down, and was sold to a West German company by the name of Demag.
Okay.
And Demag built very good quality hydraulic toggle machines in those days, and then but they started. I think there was a D85 if I remember, but it was expensive for an 85 tonner, and Demag's business was really from 150 up.
Okay.
In those days, the market was dominated by Arburg and Boy for small machines. So Demag thought they'd have a go at the small machine market, starting off with a new range of Ergotech machines built in Wehr in East Germany, the old Quasi factory.
Okay.
So I became the Ergotech specialist.
Right. Okay.
Which was a lousy idea.
Why is that?
Because what I mean, I've got absolute respect for the management in those days. A guy called Bob Jackson, a guy called Barry Taylor, sales director and managing director of Demag.
Okay.
But they did come up with this idea. So they told all the salespeople, look, what you need to do is you need to identify all the high potential small machine accounts in your territory and then give them to this new guy from Bristol.
Right.
So, of course, what would you do if you were that sales guy being asked to identify, I think it was 50.
Right.
Well, what are the 50 most high potential accounts that you've got for small machines? You're going to give them away.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Yeah.
So they gave me all the rubbish.
Right. Yeah.
And I did my best.
Yeah.
I got sold a few machines, not so many. And
so when you say the rubbish, is that because they were smaller accounts not looking to invest?
They were the low potential.
Okay.
Either they're small, or the mindset was to buy used machines, or whatever, or they knew for whatever reason that we couldn't penetrate them.
Okay, fine.
And that's, now I'm an experienced sales manager. I know salespeople are like that. Yeah, you say, "Oh, please give away your best accounts in this sector." They're not going to do that. Yeah. So that's where I started, and I remember I worked for a couple of years, and I can't remember how many machines I'd sold. It wasn't huge. And my boss, Bob Jackson, called me into his office, and he said, Graeme, we really need to review where things are going. And I thought, I'm going to lose my job here because we only sold, I don't remember the number, I only sold that many machines. So what I did, and it's before spreadsheets. So I on a piece of graph paper, I drew out, I listed, handwritten, I listed all the companies, my 200 companies that I'd been given.
Yeah.
And I had, like it was a spreadsheet, I drew a vertical line, so there's the company name, there's what they've bought, those 200 companies, there's what they've bought, and here are the Demag machines that I've sold.
Yeah.
And, of course, they hadn't bought so many. And I guaranteed that I'd been systematically processing every one of these companies and knew exactly what they bought. And I don't remember the numbers now, but I said, so my market share is 42% or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I said, that's got to be the best market share among all the sales guys in the company.
What'd they say?
And not there and then.
Yeah.
But I got promoted.
Right, okay, yeah.
So I went into this situation thinking I might lose my job.
Yeah.
And that was I became field sales manager northern area. So they decided to divide the company in two, and I became sales manager for the north, which was actually mostly agents. We had Hardy Polymers in the north and a gentleman by the name of Pat White in Ireland. I was responsible for them and one direct territory. And that was my first step into management, let's say.
Yeah. So how many people were you managing then? Sounds like
one
a handful.
Well, I had an assistant, and I had one direct sales guy and two agents.
Okay, fine.
And that was my first step.
Yeah.
I mean, I became sales manager after that, field sales manager, and after that I became sales director.
And I guess with that, the jump from being a sales or regional sales manager to sales director is quite large. Is there stuff about that kind of directorship responsibility that surprised you, or stuff that you thought, this isn't as difficult as I might think, or I didn't think that was going to be part of the role?
Actually, it was more the title than anything really changed when I got my first directorship. But I was 33 or something, and I was very proud to have director written on my business card. Actually, I succeeded a chap that died. So there was a chap by the name of Klaus Lewald. So we had a sales director from the parent company who came from the parent company in Germany. He developed a brain tumor, and it was tragic. Blimey. And I was very close with him, actually. And then he died, and sadly, I then became the sales director.
So is that someone that had been at the company throughout your whole experience there, or?
No, he in Demag in those days they used to like to have a German come through, and in fact, he was a very talented guy, actually, and all the very successful leadership in Demag at the time, they all, to qualify, needed to have spent some time abroad. So there was always a German who wanted to be in the company. Yeah, it's kind of how it worked at the time. But the original sales director was the guy that hired me. I mentioned him before, Bob Jackson. Yeah. Super guy. I always feel I'm Bob Jackson trained. Yeah. Yeah, from a long time ago. Also, the managing director, Barry Taylor, who I mentioned, he passed away just recently, sadly. But yeah, there was Bob Jackson, and then there was Klaus Lewald, and then there was me in my time.
Okay, so you enter into the sales director role. Sounds like the way you're talking about Demag was positive.
Yeah, super.
You learnt loads.
Demag's a great company. I left in a weak point.
That's what I was going to ask you. How did you come to leave that company? Well, what was the reason behind that?
Demag was part of the Mannesmann Group, and Mannesmann was a very proud German engineering company in a lot of different bits. And then they were destroyed by the British. Okay. What happened was, this is the days of the mobile phone boom. Right. And there was, at the time, the Mannesmann D2 network. Okay. Now, Mannesmann was huge, and maybe, I don't know, 2% of Mannesmann was this D2 network. And Vodafone, that's with the British connection, Vodafone wanted to take over the Mannesmann D2 network. Right. So they bought the whole of Mannesmann just for this little bit. Right. So what then happened is the rest was sold off in private equity, and then that's when Demag went through their kind of private equity phase, and then we were all busy creating reports instead of generating revenue, and that was a little bit negative. I wasn't looking to leave. I was very happy there, but I was approached by Engel, and I thought, you know what, I don't want to leave, but at least I get the opportunity to see a competitor.
Mm.
So they invited me. They flew me across to Austria
Okay.
to have a look. And in those days, Demag wasn't big in the Engel wasn't big in the UK.
Yeah.
It was a little bit niche, and Engel was
So
more.
what year are we at here?
That's 2002.
Okay.
Yeah, actually a bit earlier, 2001.
Okay.
I joined Engel in 2002, but there was a year
in
between knowing that I would and actually moving. So Engel was weaker in the UK than they were typically in other European countries. But when I saw the factory, I was blown away.
Yeah.
Especially with big machines.
Yeah.
Now, I would say the big machine market from the Europeans has been Engel and Krauss-Maffei. Demag were never big in big machines.
Okay.
But the market was very strong. Automotive industry was growing at that time. And when I saw the big machine factory called St. Valentin, I mean, it's mind-blowing today.
Yeah.
But seeing the factory is what convinced me. I said, hey, I've only come here really to get a sneaky look at a competitor, but I can't turn this down.
So what role were they offering you?
Managing director.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Actually, Barry Taylor, the former managing director at Demag, he retired. And it was never clear. There was myself, a guy who's also well known in the industry called Nigel Flowers.
Mm-hmm.
He was technical director.
Okay.
I was sales director. Nigel was technical director, and there was a German guy, another German guy called Florian Koenig, who was financial director. And they decided not to make any of us MD, but the three of us ran the business. And we all got on really well. It was good atmosphere, and that worked fine, believe it or not. So I actually went from sales director to managing director, but only when I moved.
So you must have been still pretty young at this point, though. You'd been in your 30s, right?
38.
Okay, so you're still in your 30s, get offered managing director at Engel.
Yeah.
Been out to the factory, so could see what they were all about and the potential there. Obviously, you mentioned that there wasn't the reputation of Engel wasn't as big as it is now in the UK. So it sounds like you probably thought there's an opportunity there to do something with that, and then away you went.
I've had so much luck. I mean, I've had a super career, and there's been a lot of luck involved, and I joined Engel at just the right time. It was going through a bit of a let's call it a slow patch. Engel had actually a weak reputation for service.
Okay.
That I would play on, of course, when I was at Demag, and it was. I remember I joined the company, and I got a business card with managing director.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got my name on it.
Yeah.
And managing director underneath. That was like, how can that be possible? So I was quite nervous, but I found out it was really easy to fix.
Okay.
I mean, it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
You just need to cut costs a bit because we weren't making money.
Yeah.
You need to cut costs a bit, and guess what? You need more revenue.
Yeah.
To get more revenue, to get the trust from the customers that they'd invest in you, need better service. So I spent a lot of efforts trying to improve service, and we did.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how many years it took, but not so many years until we'd become market leaders in UK.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, just from my experience and people that have mentioned you during your tenure, is that you're very relationship focused. And that seemed like a big thing that stood out to me, is that you wanted your clients or potential client to have a really positive experience with Engel, whether that be an event, whether that be a social experience, whether that be because they purchased a machine. But if they can look back on Engel and say, I had a really great time with my experience with Engel, that would stick with them. And then, that's how things last, and you get repeat clients, I guess, keeps that.
Yeah, that's very true. A very good friend of mine in the industry, a guy by the name of Darren Parsons from a company called Agent Draw. I think you know him too. He once said to me, he said, the reason that so he's now a friend, but he I approached him first as a customer, just sell him a machine.
Yeah.
And he told me the reason they switched to Engel wasn't because anything to do with the machines. It's because the mindset of Engel UK was to try and help their business.
Yeah.
And as a byproduct of that, they would invest.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I especially helped Agent Draw in any particular way, but it's just I remember him saying that to me.
Yeah.
And I think that was the mindset that we tried to maintain in the business.
Well, I think that's still true to this day. I mean, it's no secret that we're obviously working with you guys at Engel now, and we did approach other mold manufacturers to see what different companies could offer. And from a machine point of view, especially when you're a small company, there isn't a lot in it, being honest, but like price points, technology, whatever. And it's trying to find where is the difference, and it's the people side of it.
Yeah.
For us that stood out. I've built a great relationship with Wayne already, and the rest of the team. So I totally get that, because for us as a molder, and what we believe sets us apart to our clients, is the relationship building and the service. And that has obviously the same effect all the way down the supply chain. We all benefit.
Yeah.
Some of the Engel experiences are pretty legendary from what I've heard. I've heard stories of Engel jets. I've heard a story involving snorting schnapps.
Oh,
Is that ring any bells, Graham?
couldn't possibly be true. Couldn't possibly comment.
No comment. That a good friend of yours, I had a call with John Stepman.
Oh yeah.
So is there something about the experiences that you thought that you could offer people who were coming on trips or whatever that you could set you apart from everybody else?
Yeah, I did do quite a lot of let's call it social events in my time. But it's hard to really say that was marketing, or at least not deliberate marketing, because, and again, I consider myself very fortunate in my career. You meet such nice people, and they become your friends, and they really do become. John Stebbins is a good example of, or Darren, who I mentioned earlier. They're really strong friends of mine privately. Yeah. So you meet these great people in the industry, and if you have the opportunity to organise a ski trip or a motorbike trip, was a big thing that I did. Then you're not so much entertaining clients as having fun with your mates.
Yeah.
And so much, I feel so fortunate that so much of my career was about having fun with your mates. And of course, when they're your mates, they're probably more likely to buy your molding machine.
No, I agree.
I think that's changing a little bit, or has changed a bit in the industry. There's, for a number of reasons. Compliance is a much bigger topic than it used to be.
Okay.
So there would be a lot of frowning going on if someone organised a ski trip for customers these days, because that's really
So did you get much pushback? Because obviously when you got offered the role of MD with probably the responsibility to grow the UK market, and you've got this idea, and I don't know at what point, but you say, I want to book this trip and I want to take guys out to whatever event. Was there much kickback from Austria, or were they happy to say, if you think that's the right thing, you do it?
What they don't know can't hurt them.
Yeah. Seek forgiveness, not permission.
Well, you don't even have to seek forgiveness, because this is also something that's changed.
Okay.
And I don't think Engel's very, very different. A bit like, you remember when I first joined Cincinnati, they handed me the keys to a company car and said, go off and do it.
Yeah.
When I joined Engel, they handed me the keys to the building, said, go off and do it.
Yeah.
And it was really like my business.
Yeah.
Like the UK subsidiary was like my business. That was positive, but also negative. If you compare the situation now you're so much more integrated into the parent company's strategies and what they would like you to do. And as you know, I moved into an international position, which we'll come back to. So I was part of the poacher term gamekeeper, maybe. But in those days it was just get on with it. Yeah. So no one was looking over my shoulder. Are you organising a ski trip for customers? That's not good use of money. There was no one there to say that.
Yeah. And clearly the results obviously proved that it worked, because I think where you started with the story saying Engel didn't have much of a reputation compared to now, huge reputation. For many, many positive reasons. Which is amazing that that you've mentioned that you're, obviously leaving the company in whatever it is, 3 working days, but the kind of legacy that you've left behind and the foundations you've built have given the next generation such a great opportunity to continue to build that forward.
Well, Wayne is obviously the next generation.
Yeah.
In UK terms, Wayne's the next generation, and I had it so much easier than him.
Right. Okay.
This is where I say I was very lucky. So I became managing director in 2002.
Yeah.
With a pretty low turnover.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I steered the ship during a period, and it's not that I think I did okay, but it's not only that I did a fantastic job. The market grew and grew and grew.
Yeah.
And I was steering the ship at a time when we were building market share in a growing market.
Right. Okay.
It's not like that now.
Yeah.
So actually, I stepped out of ENGEL UK in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So you think about that time period, 2002 to 2018. I mean, the industry has its ups and downs, but that was a great period.
Yeah.
And then from 2018, it all got a bit more difficult. There's another managing director, Nigel Baker.
Okay.
If you know that name.
Yeah.
Nigel's still around in the industry today. He tried to retire, but didn't do a very good job of it. So
right. Okay.
popped up again. But 2018 was really the boom. The industry stopped growing. If you think of the period, it's sort of 2012 to 2018, automotive industry especially was investing like hell.
Right. Yeah.
And in 2018, a whole bunch of things went wrong. The industry figured out they'd overinvested and they had spare capacity. We had semiconductor shortages. We had a war. We had a pandemic. Now, those things are obviously all Nigel's fault.
Yeah.
Because it didn't happen on my watch, right?
Yeah. Nothing to do with you.
But if you look at a graph of turnover, then you can see it's not looking very good. 2002, now it's picking up.
Yeah.
2018, always going back down again. So
the stats are the stats, Graham.
the stats are the stats. But I can't really. I can't really take.
I mean, believe it or not, we are fast getting through the time slot that we've got, so I'm going to have to get you back by the sounds of it, because we have not even touched on the presidential role, and there are so many stories there. But before we do wrap this up, there are 2 things I wanted to ask you about. Firstly, if you could go back to, let's say, 30 years ago and speak to a young Graeme, is there anything that you would tell him knowing what you know now?
I find it. I'm sure I've made plenty of mistakes. I mean, some are small and you can identify them. But what would I do differently? I'm not really sure.
Okay.
When I was a young sales guy on the road, I was so keen for success. I didn't really have the tools to be so successful at the beginning because I didn't have the experience, didn't have the product knowledge, even the industry knowledge. But I did a lot of calls.
Yeah.
I really did a lot of calls. So I worked hard, and I think if you work hard and then you enjoy what you do and you get to know people, and it is a community. It's not just an industry; it's a community. And when you get to know people, you build on that, don't you? And so, I only look back positively. I don't think I made any big mistakes. I
so probably just enjoy it.
Yeah, enjoy it.
Enjoy the journey. Would probably be what you'd say. I mean, that ties us in perfectly to a little segment that I'd like to do. I'm going to give you 2 cues, I guess, and I'd like you to just answer. It'll become clear when I go through it. Just straight off the cuff, what you think. No reasoning, no stories behind it. Just pick one. Okay. Yeah. So, back yourself or seek reassurance.
Back yourself.
Specialize or stay broad.
Specialize.
Be liked or be respected.
Be liked.
Speak up or stay quiet.
Speak up.
Innovation or consistency.
Innovation.
Routine or variety.
Variety. They're getting easier. They were difficult to begin.
There you go. Got you thinking. That's been our first episode with Graeme. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Also, obviously, thank you to our sponsors, ENGEL, for backing on this podcast. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.